Hi guys, this is Klazartsc bringing another audio commentary, and this time I'm commentating on Game 3 of the OnGameNet Duel Tournament Group E, and this is the winners matchup. So both the guys who won their matches from the first round, Xavier and Nada, are facing off in this deciding matchup, the winner of which will be through to the OnGameNet Star League Finals. So a big prize at hand for these two great players, and really I cannot pick and choose between these two guys. I really have a huge amount of respect and love for both of these players, and just adore the way they play StarCraft and really enjoy the way they play StarCraft. Both very aggressive, dominant players of their times, and it's sad to be saying off their times for a player like Xavier. I just don't think that's fair, but I have to accept that he hasn't been as dominant as he has been, and that he isn't really reigning supreme right now. That being said, I don't think there's any player who's reigning supreme right now in the StarCraft scene. We thought Stork might have a chance. Bisu had a short stint. Since Xavier's fall, there hasn't really been anyone to really take up the mantle. Yes, Jaedong has played some great StarCraft as well, but I think that's a far cry from... he's still not in the position yet. He still has to win a couple more titles, has to win at least the MSL, before we can say that Jaedong is having... the kind of reign that we talk about Xavier having, or the kind of reign we talk about Nada having had, or Boxer or a la Rule V. So, but this is Xavier versus Nada on BlueStorm, and I think it's an interesting map. I think it's going to make for a great game, and I'm hoping it's going to make for... And Xavier critically has put that spawning pool down first, so far we've seen him go 3 hatch on the previous map on Katrina. BlueStorm is obviously a smaller map. It's 1 base to 1 base. Terran early scout is probably going to find a Zerg base and expose it if the Terran is going for fast barracks. So that might be the reason why Xavier's put that spawning pool down relatively early, instead of going for the hatchery first, instead of going for the expansion first. He doesn't want to leave himself exposed, and that it seems to be pretty standard play by Zerg players on this map. Nada going for the barracks first as well, so no question really of fast expanding on this map as such. Xavier obviously going for the 9 pool, and we have seen a resurgence of 9 pool off late. It'll be interesting to see how this game pans out between these two players. Game 1 we saw Xavier just completely rip apart Kanata, who looked, I have to say, really, really ordinary. I think Yarnak put up a little bit of a better fight versus Nada, even though it was a shorter game. I think, well, actually no, he didn't. He got destroyed as well. Let's be honest about it. He got destroyed. Xavier delaying Nada's scout a little bit, and that's very clever because his spawning pool is up, those Zerglings are coming out, so that's going to delay Nada's scout a little bit, and while Nada gets that SCV to scout, Xavier is going to be able to put that expansion down unharassed. So Nada is going to be aware of what's coming from Xavier. Nada immediately blocking off his choke because he's only got the 1 barracks up, obviously. So Xavier's early Zerglings should not be able to do too much damage. Xavier's got his Zerglings up and away now, and he's going to try and get there into Nada's base as quickly as possible. But I think Nada is going to be okay with this. I don't think Xavier's going to be able to do too much damage to Nada's economy. What Xavier is going to be able to do is slow down Nada a little bit and keep him in his base for a little bit longer and make sure he goes the tech route rather than the expansion route. He's not going to allow Nada now building that command center. So that's fairly clever by Nada. Nada using the command center to actually block off his choke, so that he can still expand rather than have to... Yep, it is indeed a command center. I was just wondering for a second there where maybe it was a barracks. I thought it was a command center when I actually saw it. So that's very clever by Nada. Nada is fast expanding. I thought the fact that Xavier had produced those early Zerglings would deter Nada from fast expanding, but Nada, with a stroke of genius, builds the command center in his choke to block off his choke as well as fast expand at the same time, using the ability of the turns to float the command center to maximum advantage. And I think that's something that's interesting to note, because on Katrina we saw Xavier go 12 hatch and he went for a 3 hatchery build, and that was what really gave him a massive advantage that his opponent Kanata just did not seem to have the answer for, or did not seem to be able to be recover from. This seems to be an entirely different prospect, and Nada already getting that academy up, so he's going to have an early push of Marines and Medics. Xavier has got that spawning pool up relatively early, which means that he's going to have a decent tech level, and he is getting gas. Nada, though, still with the SV wandering around Xavier's main. Xavier's put that 3rd hatchery up as well as a response to Nada putting down that command center, but I think that you can see the slight difference in terms of the speed with which Xavier is going to be, and Nada now has enough Marines to push those handful of Service Zerglings back and bring that command center out. So you've got to give a lot of credit to Nada for the way he's playing here. He's really countering Xavier and keeping him on his toes. That being said, I mean, it's hard to give Nada a decisive advantage. Xavier's now got that layer up. Nada, remember, has already got his academy up by now, and it's interesting for him to put up that academy so early when he's got such a small number of Marines. Since he put that command center up, he's going to need a few more Marines before he can start producing another medics or so and really be able to harass Xavier. Xavier obviously having no defenses at this point and no real tech at this point. He's building his lair. Xavier might be going straight for the Spire, and I think if he does, he might get caught off guard by Nada. Nada is not going to fall for it the way Kanata did. I think Xavier goes directly for Spire. He might find himself pressurized by a relatively early-ish Medic and Marine push from Nada. That being said, again, you've got the 9 pool from Savior, which is allowing him again to have his tech quite fast. So that layer should be coming up any second. I think since he hasn't put a high list stand down yet, I think we will probably see him plonk that Spire down. And I really think that might play to Savior's disadvantage if Nada can do some damage here. And it'll be interesting to see what Nada can come up with. It's interesting to see Nada playing so well. I'm glad to see Nada playing so well. I still think Savior probably would have the slight upper hand in this matchup. It is his best matchup. Savior now trying to push Nada back and trying to get a little bit of harassment going. Nada blocks the choke with that Medic and Marine group. So Savior doing a brilliant job, but critically for Nada, his Medic and Marine group has been revealed, as well as the Firebat. So that's going to give Savior time, perhaps, just to put up a Sunken. Nada is very famous. Savior now putting up the Spire in the middle. Nada's SCV is going to go in and scout it again. And Savior's base is defenseless. That Spire is not going to be up in time to defend anything. He's going to need a Sunken or two. He's counting on those Zerglings. Very clever play by Savior. Rather than spending resources on Sunken, he's counting on those Zerglings to keep Nada pinned back, but it's only a matter of time before Nada pushes out with those Medic and Marines, and Savior doing his best to buy himself some time. That's the other thing about BlueStorm, because of there's only one base, because of relative short travel distances, this kind of pressurizing from a Terran player can be a lot more effective. Nada now going for the 3 racks and continuing to stick with his aggressive strategy. He's got his engineering bay up as well, and he's doubtlessly researching, and Savior managed to sneak a couple of Zerglings into Nada's main. So Savior has seen Nada's tech. Savior has seen that Nada's not got a factory or any sort of high tech coming, which means that Nada is going for a relative bio build, very similar to what he went for on the previous map. I think that's a little bit towards Nada's disadvantage. I think Muteless Harass is a lot more powerful on a map like this, because it's even though it is a slightly smaller map, there are numerous expansions that having the additional maneuverability of air units gives you a huge advantage of. Nada finally again pushing out again, and Savior, you've got to give him so much credit. I just don't understand what Nada was afraid of there. I think a couple of Firebats in that choke with the Medic would have held that choke for Nada, and he should have pushed out earlier and forced Savior to spend some money on Sunkens. I think that's Nada's first mistake thus far in this game. I think Nada's let Savior bully him too much. Savior with a couple of Zerglings going into Nada's natural expo, but Nada defending successfully, and Nada still sitting there, and he still sits there, and I don't think that's wise. I think, you know, he was in Savior's base with his SCV, he saw the Spire go up, he saw when the Spire was going up, and he had that time, he had that window to push, and he didn't even force Savior to build a single Sunken, and I think that might cost Nada in the long run, because Savior has now got his Mutilus up. Now he's going to be able to defend himself. That being said, he's still going to be able to he still might be able to be forced to expend a couple of more resources on Sunkens, with Nada pushing out with a large group of Medic and Marines when he does, but that's going to be much later in the game, and it's going to have a much smaller impact on Savior's economy and tech. And Savior now coming in with the Mutilist. Nada is bunkered up with his Marines, ready to defend against them. And Savior, I don't think Nada's got too many turrets in place, so I'm not sure. Oh, okay, he does have a turret or two, so he does seem to be fairly well defended. He seems to be content to play more of a turtle-style game this time around. Again, the critical feature is going to be that third expo. Nada showed great awareness to take out that third expo very early versus Yarnak, and that changed the game. And Nada sending out a couple of Firebats to try and catch Savior's Zerglings off guard. Savior pulls the Mutilus back and takes out one of the Firebats. One of the Firebats escapes unscathed, or actually slightly scathed with a little bit of damage done to him. Savior once again bring the Mutilus around. Nada still settling in around his choke mainly. He's got a few turrets. He's building more turrets for defense. So Savior once again doing a great job. And again, what is so different? We saw again, if we look back at the game, okay, this is the different map, different builds. All of that being said, Savior going 9 pool this match versus Yarnak going 12 hatch in the previous game, and Savior once again using that ridge to perfect advantage, picking off a couple of Marines, though losing a Mutalisk in the process as well. But as I said, we saw Yarnak was just not able to keep Nada in his base. Nada was able to venture out and harass him, force him to build Sunkens, take out that expo, change the game in his favor. And yet with Savior, he's sitting back, he's turtling. Maybe that's a feature of the map, or maybe it's just a testimony to Savior's superior Zerg versus Terran as opposed to Yarnak's. And Savior picking off a turret. We certainly didn't see Yarnak doing any of that, and just Savior using, and again, brilliant by Savior, because he's taking on that turret there and using that cliff edge, the edge towards the ocean, towards the lake, towards his advantage, and stopping that supply depot from being built, possibly slowing Nada down a little bit, and Nada really being forced to combat those Mutalisks, and being kept on his toes by Savior. And Savior's got that expansion up now at the 11 o'clock position. This expansion is, in my view, one of the keys to the game, and Savior going for lurkers. And I suppose on a smaller map like this, you really do need lurkers, because the Terran player can get there quite quickly, and Savior not cocky enough to think that he'll be able to defend it with Mutilus alone, and that was the mistake that Yarnak made. He didn't adapt at all to the fact that Nara didn't go fast tech, that Nara didn't just go straight away for the factory and the starport and try to go for those science vessels early. He produced more medics and more marines, and Yarnak just didn't account for that. Savior is accounting for that. He is getting a couple of lurkers up, and all Savior is doing here is buying himself some time to get those lurkers in position. Critically, even though Nara would have has an academy and would have comsat scans, he does not have a science vessel yet, and those two lurkers are buried. And I wonder if they're stop lurkers, if they're whole lurker mode. He's got a science facility building now. He's got a starport up. He's going to have a control tower. I think he might possibly want to even produce a dropship before he produces a science vessel. Savior coming in once again to Nara's undefended base. He's going to try and pick off a turret there. Nara doesn't have a lot of troops there to defend. Savior takes out the turret. He once again picks off the SCV, mining the supply depot. So Savior with these little niggling damages versus Nara is causing Nara significant harassment.